You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Hey there, it's Tristra, aka Tristra New Year Jaeger, Chief Strategy Officer at Rock Paper Scissors. Oh, I'm so glad you came and joined us today on the show because we have a really intriguing time for you planned. First, Dmitri sits down with the amazing Randy Nichols, artist manager extraordinaire and the CEO of Force Media Management. The two of them go deep into the state of live music, as well as the history, starting with the pre-Live Nation era and then moving through the roll-up that made the behemoth that we know today. Randy's also been at the forefront of figuring out the mysterious ticketing strategy math. It's kind of like sacred geometry, but for live events. He's especially thought a lot about the scalper side of the equation. We hear about those efforts, including the time he sent someone undercover to the Ticket Scalpers Convention, or rather, the National Association of Ticket Brokers Conference. There's also so much more. But first, the news.
Rock Paper Scanner.
Hey everybody, Tristra here for our weekly news roundup. And as some of you know, I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Rock Paper Scissors, the music, tech, and innovation PR firm. And today, alas, Dmitri can't join me, but I have someone who is also awesome, namely Jade Preboy, our new business guy.
Back again. Hi, Tristra.
Yeah. Hey, Jade, bringing the millennial shade to this somewhat cynical Gen Xers world. It's great. All right. So we picked out some articles from the scanner, from the Rock Paper Scanner, which you can sign up for in all the ways you are probably heard about. Rock Paper Scanner had a bunch of cool stuff this week, but we wanted to highlight a few things and talk them out. So one thing I thought was really interesting, and this isn't the only news along these lines, right? Basically, we are seeing the death of the content farm as we speak. One of the articles that points to this is from an outlet called Tech Startups, so I've seen this covered in other outlets as well. And the headline that they came up with was YouTube to demonetize. I keep saying demonize.
Yeah, I thought that was YouTube to demonize AI-generated videos.
YouTube to demonize AI-generated videos starting July 15th, so like real soon.
Yeah, that's soon.
So along with a bunch of media companies that were gaming basically Google's SEO to make money and also playing around with the Facebook algorithm that just shuttered this week, we have YouTube basically coming out and saying, we will not let you collect money against, they've often called it repetitive content. And I think they've actually had it in their T's and C's for quite some time. They're just now really prohibiting it and saying we're not going to monetize this.
So I think that's good. I personally can't stand videos with the AI generated voice.
Why don't you like them, Jade?
I mean, I get it, but I get it as like a useful thing sometimes. But now it's like if I click on one of those videos, I'm just like, yeah, next. I just can't deal with the cadence.
And even young kids who are watching YouTube are like, oh, this is all from a content farm. You kind of know there's a problem, right? Even the people that are meant to just be mesmerized by this, like deer in headlights. It is really tiresome. I'm kind of interested to see what some other UGC and social platforms do in the light of this. Like I know Facebook has really embraced the AI slop and paid a bunch of AI sloppeteers, pretty decent sums of money to produce this thing. It'll be really interesting to see if this impacts other corners of the tech world, or if it's just going to be a YouTube thing, and how are they going to enforce, like how strictly are they going to enforce it?
Yeah. I think it's cool. I think it's good for creators. I mean, if you have to use your own voice and your own face to make original content and that's where you get paid. Yeah. Good. That's cool. Where it should be.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to maintain the health of the platform. That's for sure. So you had some other YouTube news that caught your eye, Jade, didn't you?
This is from Music Ally. YouTube's Ask Studio feature adds AI insight to its analytics. Now, there we go, YouTube. That's a good use of AI.
Absolutely. If for anyone who's ever tried to interpret the mysterious hieroglyphics that are platform-specific analytics, having an AI to ask, did my video perform better or something? I'm sure you could just ask natural language questions and it would be like, here's what you did.
And I mean, that's where I think AI is most useful right now is providing data insights. You can collect a large amount of data and for it to be able to tell you, hey, it looked like you posted this video at 6 p.m. Like, do that again. It looks like this audience really responded well. Have you thought about doing this video? Like, I think that's brilliant. Absolutely. I'm here for it.
Yeah, there's an interesting, I think that is absolutely true. And I think that's going to be what we're going to see a lot of when it comes to entertainment and art related online platforms, is they're going to offer better ways for people like artists to see exactly what's happening, because it can be very confusing if you look at a bunch of stats and you're just like, what does this even mean?
Yeah.
All right, cool. One other thing that caught my eye, I thought was interesting, was from Media, looking at the world of fandom. And this also relates to YouTube and content and AI slop. This article is called Why Fandom's More is More Era Could Backfire. But it's really a focus on the grind of producing content and using exclusive content or extras or whatever to lure super fans and keep them engaged. And what Olivia Jones at Media is arguing is that sometimes if you just flood the zone with content, you're going to wind up actually wearing fans out and disengaging them. So she points to a TikTok creator, Addison Rae, who also has a strong music component to what she does, and that she's started posting every week with like very carefully considered videos. Of course, that's great if you have a massive audience that you've already built on a platform. It may not work the same way for emerging artists. But the bigger question for me is content even the answer anymore? Is social media really the answer anymore? Now, we're seeing with the YouTube news about, demonetizing AI stuff, with the overall sense that artists are really tired of the relentless grind of social media posts as a way to get their music out there or try to build an audience. You got to kind of wonder what's next. And it sounds like, this isn't really what Olivia it says in the end, but it made me think, that article made me think, probably content and just flooding people with content or giving them exclusive access to content is not going to be the way we crack this nut.
Yeah, I agree. I also think the conversation around let's wring these super fans dry is, I'm sick of it in the music biz.
Yeah, it feels like a similar mentality to let's take all these catalogs and squeeze this IP for as much as possible. And that's similar to what's happening in cinema, where it's like the major studios are like, let's ride this Marvel thing into the ground. And I think we're going to start seeing not only fan backlash, but also a lot of creative people coming in and saying, hey, let's do this completely differently. And it'll be very interesting.
Yeah. And in terms of platforms and platform lifecycle, the length of time from one platform until the next big platform keeps compounding. So we're kind of due for a shift now.
Yeah, like a paradigm shift.
The last big shift was TikTok.
And I think we're due for a shift, and it's just going to be AI. Our AI is posting on behalf of us. AI agents posting for me to your AI agents, and then we'll just they can just do all that, and we can go and sit in the park and have a soda.
Yeah, they can just watch it all too.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be great. Finally, we've created the perfect system.
I have another social media comment here. This is also from Music Ally. Report. This is a report thread on Threads. Threads is closing in on X's daily active users total. And that's just funny to me because Instagram has always been a platform that always changes. And that always kind of like, if there is a new platform, if people are all of a sudden doing a new type of social activity, that Instagram is going to be first to copy it and try to win that market. So that's just something I've always kind of noticed about Instagram, is it's like, well, it used to just be for photos, and then it was for videos, and now it's for...
Then it had the sort of Snapchat-like features, and then it had the sort of reels that are kind of TikTok-esque,
Yeah, stories was just what Snapchat was, so I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and Threads, like, who would have thought it? I remember when it came out, it just felt like some kind of extension of the MMA brawl between... the non-existent MMA brawl between Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, but clearly... The fight continues, and X is facing some weird stuff now, right? They just lost their CEO. What is going on over there?
Yeah, I wonder why. That's weird.
Wonder why. I know. It must be such an awesome place to work. And there's a lot of pride, I'm sure, in the product, especially Grok, with its wonderful balance and friendly tendencies. Yeah. What else you got?
I thought this was hilarious. This is from 2 days ago. Julie Board at TechCrunch. ChatGPT hallucinated about a music app Sound Slice so often the founder made the lie come true.
Yeah, that was a really interesting story, and probably, again, one of the more interesting uses of AI. You want to give a summary of what exactly happened with SoundSlice?
Yeah, so people were on ChatGPT asking it for a way to render their music that they were asking ChatGPT to make somehow.
Yeah, weren't they like creating these sort of ASCII tabs and things like that?
Yeah. And then people were saying, "Oh, go into SoundSlice and it'll play it for you." and the SoundSlice founder was looking at all these requests, being like, "Where's all this stuff coming from? Who's uploading this?" He dives into it, realizes it's ChatGPT, enables the feature, and he says at the end here, he's like, "I feel a little bit conflicted on it. I'm happy to add a tool that helps people, but I feel like our hand was forced in a weird way. Should we really be developing features in response to misinformation?"
I love the agility and I like the sense of humor, but yeah, it is weird. Like if ChatGPT starts saying that you're an Olympic marathon runner, do you have to like start running a 3.5 minute mile or whatever? Like these are going to be hurdles that'll be tougher and tougher to clear, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this article. I enjoyed the headline, and I enjoyed the agility of the SoundSlice team to just say
people want it. Let's do it.
And one thing I keep saying over and over again, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast yet, but it's like the AI train has left the station and we're all kind of playing catch up. And that's just we got to jump on the last train of this if we want to play ball here. I think we're going to see more of this. I think this is going to be more of a theme.
Maybe ChatGPT will start asking us to create instruments that it likes.
Maybe.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us and talking through the news. And make sure to listen to the rest of the episode.
Thanks, Ristra. See y'all.
Thank you, Jade.
We're switching things up a bit at our July seismic activity. Where worlds collide, we're bringing together sports and music. Join us on July 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK time for Stadiums to Streams, how music, sports, and tech can work together. We'll hear from experts Siraji Thomas, founder of Sampre Solutions, Jay Chalet, award-winning international DJ, MC, and producer, and Chantal Epp, founder of Click and Clear. Register for free and learn more about our monthly seismic activity events at musictectonics.com.
Now for our feature interview.
Randy Nichols is an artist manager at Fly South Music Group and founder of Force Media Management. He's known for building and managing the careers of globally recognized artists, including Under Oath, Say Anything, and Bayside. These are clients that have earned gold records, Grammy nominations, and generated tens of millions in merchandise sales. I've wanted to talk to Randy because of his innovative work in direct-to-fan engagement, ticketing, and digital strategy, bridging artist advocacy with scalable infrastructure. Randy also serves on the board of the National Independent Talent Organization, where he leads national advocacy efforts to combat the ticket scalping industry. And Randy's advised and invested in leading music tech companies such as Bands in Town and At Venue, which recently achieved a $200 million plus exit to 6th Street. So totally relevant to the Music Tectonics audience. Not only that, he has a portfolio of advisory clients, including Immensity, an AI-powered music data studio, Propeller, a digital platform driving social impact through culture, and Quantizer, a stealth mode AI data product for live events. Lots to talk about here. Welcome to the show, Randy.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always fun chatting with you and excited to do this with some others listening.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I've definitely been following along, not only with your career, but also kind of the work you do around advocacy in the industry. And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you. Hey, let's dive in. How would you describe the state of live music today in terms of its health, its cultural impact, and the live music economy?
That's a really big question because culture and economy don't necessarily always align, but
True.
And as far as health of the industry is also interesting because you have the behemoths of the industry, be it Live Nation, AEG, or the budding behemoth that not many people talk about in the States currently, CTS Eventim, who's a massive promoter and ticketing company. In Europe, you have these giant entities who are doing great. And, you have the indies who are struggling a little bit more so. And on the artist side, you have the same thing. You have the superstars who, for the most part, are doing great. every year you're going to see an article about one or two major headliners that aren't selling tickets, maybe had to cancel a tour, downgrade a tour, and everyone will say the sky is falling. But, it's kind of the same thing every year. There's a couple of people struggling, but overall, the health of the industry feels good, but there's more that can be done to protect both independents and just the up and coming people within the industry as well.
Hey, that's interesting to think about the disaggregation of it's not all the same for all of the players. Is what you're saying about the independents different from in the past? I mean, were independents kind of left on their own? They could develop within a small market, not being touched by some bigger players? Or are there more independents out there now that are just giving it a go?
When you talk about independent promoters, if you go back the beginning of my career, 20, 25 years ago, all the promoters were independents. And each promoter in their own city kind of had a monopoly over their city to some degree, although there was one or two other promoters. If you looked at Chicago, it was Jam Presents. San Francisco, it was Bill Graham Presents. New York, it was Delsner Slater, and could go on and everywhere in the country. And then they all formed under one roof as SFX was rolled up like 20 plus years ago, which became Live Nation. And one of the problems with that concept for other promoters is the economies of scale that these huge companies can earn makes it a lot more difficult for an independent promoter to compete. And I'll give you an example. The biggest thing is the independent promoters make most of their money the way all promoters always made their money, as a promoter. Selling tickets, maybe parking, food and beverage at the venue. But with Live Nation, they're selling advertising. They're doing deals with Coca-Cola to sell Coca-Cola across their venues. They own one of the biggest ticketing companies in the world where, that revenue is all used to support the company, which basically means they can make lower margins on the concerts where there's a lot of competition, and higher margins in other areas like advertising where there isn't competition. And I'm not one to speak to, the Justice Department's obviously investigating all this. And honestly, I'm not a monopoly expert or an antitrust expert. I don't know what the answers are. And I'm not one to start taking shots and say that they're definitely evil or what they're doing is illegal. But what I can tell you is that structure makes it harder for some competing promoters. But what I'll also say is that system can be really good for the artists, though, too, because you have a company that's making money from other areas that now doesn't need to worry about the margin as much on the event, which means the artist can walk out with more money. So there's so many sides to the argument, which is why I very much wanted to add that caveat that I'm not simply attacking the huge companies that have these economies of scale, because there's just a lot of questions. And you look at AEG, who has built economies of scale, and as I said, CTS Eventum in Europe. It's tough for the indies, but it's not just one company that's crushing them.
Randy, that's really interesting context, both in terms of the history that you told about how everybody started out as an independent, but then amalgamating into this like larger entities. And then that kind of shifts the dynamics of those relationships and the opportunities for the independents, and certain income offsetting could have a negative impact. It could have a positive impact as well. So that's really valuable. And I think you just crystallized it so well. It's exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast to sort of help us get there quickly in terms of like what's actually happening in terms of this economy and the impact of these kind of relationships and shifts. Maybe this is part of the answer, but what do you see as the biggest challenges in live music today?
I think one of the biggest challenges is ticket price. And there's a lot of factors that come into it, from super high fees that upset fans to scalpers hoovering up tickets and reselling them later, to then artists trying to figure out what to do because somebody else is taking a large portion of the gross from their shows and pocketing it. So then they start raising the prices to remove the margins for the scalpers, which in theory makes sense, but the fan is the one who loses in all these things. So that I think just pricing in general just becomes a really big problem across the board, just in so many facets.
Yeah. I want to get into ticket scalping, but first, let me just understand a little bit about what you're saying. Pricing doesn't just include scalping. You're really saying there's just so many players involved. It's hard for both fans and artists to even understand how much they should be paying, or at what point they should be paying, or how much they're paying.
I'll give a good example here. And like to go back what you asked about the health of the industry, this kind of dives into that too, is nobody really wants to talk about the truth. Everybody wants to talk up their side of the argument versus drilling down to what the problem is and how to find solutions. And one of the issues that I'm working hard on right now, and ticket scalping's hard, this one's probably 10 times harder. And that is, we've had over the past 30 years, artists were constantly looking to get more money for our acts. Be it, one, we deserve it. We work hard. They're the ones on stage that bring the people in. But also they're making less money from record sales and other areas. So they need the revenue. So they have leverage with promoters, and they fought to get more and more of the guarantee, more and more of the gross as their guarantee. So what's happened over the years is, as artists get a larger share of the gross, the promoters need to protect their downside. And they invented the ticket fee. And the ticket fee started about 30 years ago when a gentleman named Fred Rosen ran Ticketmaster. That could be a 5-hour interview in itself about that. But we'll just say he invented the ticket fee. And the ticket fee, ultimately, it goes to the promoter, it goes to the venue. In some rare instances, can end up in the artist's pocket as well. But these fees are not something that's just going back into Ticketmaster's coffers. They do get their share. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to defend them. But this fee was invented to protect the promoter's downside. And because of that, then the artist side is fighting for even more money. And again, this is where the fan loses, because you buy a ticket now for $50 and there's $30 in fees. In reality, most of that, let's say 20 something dollars of that, is really the ticket price just worked in as fees. And then, a couple of those dollars are going to the ticketing company to cover their fees for running the ticketing company. And what I'd love to see happen, and this is a huge challenge, but all the fees disappear. And rather than, they're not going to just go away. That's what the fan wants to see, but it's not reality. But they just need to all be factored into the ticket price. So if an artist was making 85% of the gross, they probably should make 75% of the gross. And that money that were fees should now be factored into the actual ticket price. And it just makes a more enjoyable experience for a fan. Nothing makes us more angry when we go to buy a ticket and see that the majority of the cost is in a fee. And we need to actually do something about it. And recently, the Biden administration had passed this fee transparency, where now you see the fee broken out when you buy your ticket at the end rather than at the front in this drip pricing model. But at the end of the day, we're all staring at a fee. And I think we need to remove this concept of fees and move into these more transparent deals in live music, where nobody's hiding revenue and it's all on the table and it's all appropriately shared.
So you're saying the fee is really obfuscating a negotiation process. Somebody pushed for a little more percentage here, or maybe a lot more percentage here, and then the fee got added on and grew specifically to offset the negotiations that happened in the original deal.
Yeah, pretty much that's the story. The best way to explain this is most deals for artists are structured as what we'll call a sellout deal. And most shows don't actually sell out. So $3 or $4 of every ticket is going directly into the promoter's pocket outside of this deal that's negotiated with the artist. And it's just their downside protection. And to go a step further, the way that this system was created 30 years ago by Fred Rosen is ticketing previously was designed as a way where it was an expense for promoters. Fred Rosen and Ticketmaster 30 years ago turned it into a revenue stream for promoters. And they said, instead of paying us $1.50 a ticket to sell your ticket, we'll pay you $3 to sell your ticket, and I'll take $1.50 from it. And everybody wins. But in reality, the fan paid for it. And then as artist guarantees grew, as venue expenses grew, these fees just increased and increased. And what the ticketing companies do, and this isn't just Ticketmaster, like, to be clear again, it's every major ticketing company, they pay advances to venues for the right to sell their tickets. And then that advance is paid back on a couple of dollars per ticket. So ticketing companies are really giant banks loaning venues money to keep the lights on at very extreme interest rates.
Wow, man, you're just breaking it down so clearly. And we've already put off the ticket scalping conversation, but we got to talk about it. How did you get involved in the fight against ticket scalping? And tell us more about the nuance of what's happening in that area.
Yeah, so I'll start at the very, very beginning, but I'll fast forward quickly. When I was in high school and even junior high school, I would camp out to buy concert tickets overnight at my local Ticketmaster on Long Island. And,
Amazing.
What would happen is I'd be the first or second in line. I'd walk inside. The Ticketmaster printer is just printing nonstop. And if I was lucky, I might get one pair of tickets. I was just like, how the hell is this possible? He's got a stack of tickets on his desk in here. Nobody's picking them up. And they're telling me it's sold out. And that just pissed me off then. And I was like, this company's just a front for organized crime or some kind of criminals just ripping people off. And that started my frustration many years ago. And as years went on, I've been working in the industry and I've always knew it was a problem. But over the last couple of years, I really wanted to understand it better. And what I've seen previously is everybody screams and yells and says the ticket scalpers are assholes, they're ripping us off, but nobody's really trying to learn and understand what they're doing. And I did a couple of things. I started befriending scalpers. I started getting into groups that scalpers hang out in online. And I really wanted to understand them. And there's the old saying, there's no honor in thieves. And in talking to a lot of these ticket scalpers, they will all trash talk the people who are doing things that are worse than what they're doing. So I learned a ton. And then last year, I've been so vocal against scalpers, I realized I couldn't be the person to do this. But last year, we sent someone from the National Independent Talent Organization to the National Ticket Scalpers Convention. And that's called like the National Association of Ticket Brokers Conference. And we sent someone there to report back what was going on. And through that, I began to really understand the products that people use, the high quality data products they have. And what I really started doing was, rather than just complaining that these tools exist, I started using them, started understanding how much money they're making, how they're distributing their tickets, how they use data to better price tickets, and realized, for one thing, they're significantly more advanced than the primary side and the legitimate players in the industry are.
Wow.
But what was great that I started doing is finding their data reports and then pulling reports and then sharing them with legislators and the district attorneys and the Department of Justice and saying, here's their data. This is how they're operating their business. This is what's available to their clients. This is what needs to be dealt with. And it changed the narrative significantly to these legislators when it went from somebody coming in and saying these people are bad and their side coming in and saying they're good, to us using their own data against them.
So what did the data show?
For instance, one of the things that they actually do is they go in and tell legislators that they're saving customers money, that they're actually there to help people get into events for cheaper. And there is some truth to what they're saying. And what I'll share as part of their argument is, take a baseball team that's not playing very well, which is every year, statistically, half of them are bad teams, if not more. and they each play 162 games a year. A lot of those tickets don't sell. So those tickets ended up distributed on these scalper platforms, and they sell significantly below face value. So they aggregate all of that data and then show, look how much money we've saved the consumer. When they pull those reports, they leave out the Beyonce and the Taylor Swift tours, and they just show their failing sports events to show how they're saving people so much money. And I was able to go in and get access to these tools from multiple companies. There's at least a dozen different data companies out there that you can access this data through, and show them real numbers from real events of what was actually happening. For instance, The Cure, when they played New York City, the scalpers were grossing around $500,000 per show on their shows at Madison Square Garden. And the band was playing on low ticket prices. The scalpers as a whole probably made a larger profit than The Cure made. Certainly more money than any individual band member made.
Wow. So where should things be going in terms of addressing the issue of ticket scalping as well as the larger issue of pricing you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. So on the pricing side, what artists have done is the scalpers argued for many years, we're a legitimate business. Artists don't know how to price, and there's inaccuracies in the marketplace, and we are fixing those pricing inaccuracies by buying up the tickets and selling them at market rate. So what artists are doing now is they're listing their tickets more often at market rate, which makes it harder for scalpers to make a profit. But it means that the fan is paying more. What really needs to happen in addition to that is laws that begin to block scalpers from making huge profits. Like, we need to allow fans to be able to resell a ticket. Like, I understand you buy a ticket, you can't go to an event. But there are these multi-billion-dollar private equity-backed industries who are using high-tech tools to get the tickets before the fans and then creating a marketplace. And the only way you could describe it is they're unregulated equities, because these huge companies, they're shorting shows. They're selling tickets at a high price, and then they're waiting for the price to drop closer to the show date and fulfilling those orders. So it's literally the equivalent of shorting a stock. And that type of activities need to change. And what a lot of people have been saying, and I've heard even like guys like Kid Rock who were in the White House with Trump, he said, I'm a Republican, but we need regulation in this area. And I actually disagree and say we actually need deregulation around ticketing, because artists and event holders don't have the right to make decisions about their own product, because the scalpers have created these laws to protect them that allow these marketplaces to exist. What we really need is a law that says if you're an artist and you're throwing an event, they're your ticket, they're the artist property, and they issue a license to the fan to allow them to come to the event. And if our events were operated like that, you wouldn't have these massive secondary markets.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so wild to get into the detail, because once you get to the point where you've actually gone to the Ticket Scalpers convention and you've grabbed the data, you actually have some understanding that the entire industry or the legislators didn't have before. So this is absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure groundbreaking information for our listeners.
And it's something that I'd encourage people to go and look for these companies. People could reach out to me or do your research, because there's a lot we can all learn to better operate our own businesses. Because at the end of the day, it's the reason that you and I have connected too, is like, I'm a data geek. I'm a music tech guy more than the ticket scalper guy. And I've just discovered the data, and it's exciting. There's so much that we can do to empower talent with that data.
Speaking of which, there's a lot more you and I can talk about, but we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the whole idea of fandom, direct-to-fan relationships, merch, because you're not just a ticket guy. We'll be right back.
Music Tectonics, Swimming with Narwhals, Startup Pitch Competition applications are live now. Head over to musictectonics.com/conference to find the link to apply, eligibility requirements, and a timeline for the competition. Get your application in and purchase a badge by August 8th, 2025 to be eligible to participate.
All right, we're back. Randy, as a manager, I'm sure you're very involved with the evolving conversations around fandom and direct-to-fan relationships, including around the financial relationship there. First, let's talk about merch. How important is merch in artists' careers, and what are the emerging trends and innovations in that space?
So merch, from my axe is probably the most important piece of their business. I've made more money over my career from merchandise than any other area of the industry. And one thing I want to touch on, and you didn't say the buzzword that everybody says, so I'm just going to say it anyway. And everybody talks about the super fan now. And in my opinion, the super fan is the biggest bullshit saying out there, because to any developing artist or just real artist who's out there hustling at any level from when they get started through to A-list superstardom, that core fan who loves the artist was always there. This isn't a new concept. What's happened over the last couple of years is the major labels have really discovered the value of the artist's biggest fan. And now they're trying to build an ecosystem to monetize those fans. And the successful artists, you look at, the Grateful Dead is a great example of the super fan. They've been monetizing their fans in a respectful fashion for over 50 years. But nowadays you have these labels coming in to try to do the same thing, but worrying about investors' bottom line. And you're never going to get it right when you're viewing it like that.
Yeah, I guess the other question is, are there any other emerging trends and innovations? You're saying this concept of a super fan, you've got some problems with that phrase or how it's being used now. And I'm just curious to hear more about any other emerging trends or innovations that you think are actually having an impact around both merch and fandom.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call them emergent trends so much as just getting better at running these businesses. I feel like most artists are now using Shopify to run our online stores. There's an entire Shopify ecosystem of apps that a lot of people haven't fully discovered that you can use to better run your stores. And then like one platform, and again, this isn't cutting edge technology because it's another publicly traded company, but the company Klaviyo, who builds communication tools with customers for your stores, like tools like that are so essential. Like for my artists, we build flows in Klaviyo where fans do certain actions in the Shopify store, they will see certain results. And it allows us to better communicate with our fans. I'll give a great example. A couple of years ago during COVID, we did live streams for my artist Under Oath to help keep the lights on during COVID. And we did vinyl reissues of a bunch of records, merch reissues, and then live streams for core records of the band's catalog. And what I used Klaviyo for in that moment was we put a bunch of these records up for sale. Fans immediately bought the records because they were highly in demand, out of print for a long time, but didn't buy the live streams. So I immediately was able to pull a query in Klaviyo to show me how many people bought the live stream but didn't buy the vinyl. And that was not a great number. Then I was able to do the opposite and say, how many people bought the vinyl but not the live stream? And it was massive. And we were doing 3 different live streams over 3 weeks. So I did something where if you bought the vinyl, that showed you were obviously a big fan. You gave us a chunk of money. I offered them an extreme discount to watch the first live stream because I knew that we were offering an amazing product for all 3 events. So anyone who already spent money with us, I was able to, with the click of one button, pull a list of those customers and then offer them a special deal. And what we did then after the show, we knew the show was a huge success. 2 days later, we sent an offer that said, if you buy the next 2 shows, we'll, lower the price a little bit because you already bought the first one. And it was just a way to engage fans. And there's so many different things that you could use with Klaviyo. But it's just using tools like this are just so important to understanding who your customer is and then rewarding them. And also not bothering them with marketing as well. To remove them from marketing is almost more important than rewarding at times.
Right. If you segment it correctly, you're hitting them with the right message for their particular situation.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some of the tech and innovations you keep an eye on in live music and artist fan relationships beyond some of these nuts and bolts things that, or maybe it's all nuts and bolts, I don't know. But are there other kind of innovations that are emerging in your areas of expertise that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I like the companies like Openstage, and there's others who have their hand in different pieces. You have Seated who are doing interesting things, or Lalo. But as a general area, I like this idea of understanding who your fans are and being able to activate and reward them. And, with OpenStage is a great example of that. And there's a bunch of other companies that are building similar tools to really view the artist's fandom and make sure when you're putting a show on sale, to go back to my scalper conversation earlier, to make sure that we get the tickets in the hands of the people who have taken multiple actions. And Ticketmaster a few years ago tried this with their verified fan platform. They had varying levels of success and failure in it. And I think one of the biggest flaws of it, and it's one of those things you're not really going to realize till after the fact, is it was rewarding people for taking action in the moment. And what's great about a lot of these tools that are coming around now is they can look back and see, what have you done over the last few years? As artists are building their own tech stack around their career, you can really view how people have interacted with an artist over the years and then reward them based on their level of interaction. And that type of tool I find really interesting. I also am intrigued with AI tools that we can use to better understand how to market to fans. For instance, I'm involved with this company called Immensity, where they're using AI and machine learning to analyze paid ad campaigns on the social platforms. But what we're analyzing is actual impact on DSPs, where most people are looking at engagement from an ad campaign. And in my opinion, whether it's direct to consumer or streams, whatever it may be, engagement is pointless, because if I put a picture of a hot guy or a pretty girl, you're going to see engagement. What I want to measure is action. And what I love about what Immensity is doing is they can track that you ran an ad campaign and your streams increased by X number, and then can tell you which platform it was responding on and how to realign your ad campaign. And a great example I use is Under Oath, who is an older rock band. We don't really have a strong TikTok fan base, as you'd imagine for a rock band where their fans are in their 30s and 40s. So we ran ad campaigns on Facebook, Meta, Twitter, Google, TikTok. We saw the best return on investment on TikTok, which we never would have expected. But TikTok was significantly driving more streams to the DSPs. So we flip-flopped our ad campaign to heavily weight a platform that we weren't going to spend barely anything on because our fans just aren't there and aren't reacting. But we found that it was an unbelievable place to surface new fans. And using technology to find things like that, I find really exciting.
Well, it's interesting. As you talk about the different innovations you're keeping an eye on, a lot of it seems related to feeling less like you're broadcasting either to old fans or to a broad audience to try to convert, but really to understand the nuances of those segments, which to me feels like a trend that we're seeing in society that's broader, is towards personalization. People talk about there's going to be more and more personalization. In a way, could you say that the segmentation and the data you get to give you the ability to segmentation is on the path to personalization for marketing?
Yeah, it definitely is personalization. And part of that goal is, when you're working with an artist who's been around for a long time, the goal is to surface new music to old fans. Quite often, we don't want to hear the new record. Like, fans' least favorite thing to hear at a show is, and now listen to one of our new songs. And you see everyone's back and they go to the bathroom. So the idea is, how can you use this data of all these different segments and figure out how to introduce new music to these different groups of people? And some fans want to engage one way while others another way. And it's trying to figure out and understand that base to find the best way to get them to engage with something that they would appreciate if they gave it the time of day.
Nice. This is so cool to hear your perspective as somebody who works directly with artists as a manager. And I know you get pitched on and try out a lot of different platforms and music tech startups. I'm curious, can you share what are some of the pitfalls that music tech startups get wrong from your perspective as this band manager and someone who's involved in live music?
Yeah, it's funny. I always describe these wide-eyed tech entrepreneurs that come into music is you regularly have people coming in the room fixing problems that aren't problems. And what's great though is a large portion of these people, they're really smart men and women, and they listen and they learn and they pivot their products to fit what we actually need. But one of the big pitfalls though is you have some people with ego who just come in and believe that their idea is right, and they don't want to listen to anyone, and they bring a product to market that no one's interested in. And one of the biggest areas that I've seen fail time and time again for over 20 years now is a platform to help undiscovered artists get discovered. I've just found that those platforms, no fan is actively going out and searching for their new favorite band. They're excited when they discover their new favorite band, but they're not going to a community to discover that. They may go to their existing communities and discover that, and they're excited by it, but they're not going to a new platform that is only about that. And what you end up with is these massive repositories of artists who are trying to build a career that are listening to other artists who are trying to build a career. And it becomes just a service to take a couple of bucks a month from an artist who wants to be discovered. And that's a huge pitfall. I feel like I will continue for another 20 years to have people pitch me some version of that idea.
All right, I've got one last question for you, Randy. Feel like we've covered a lot of topics here, but I just want to give you another chance as you look through emerging music innovations. Are there any things that you could see yourself diving into more in the future, or that you'd like to see emerge more on the music innovation front?
One area that I've been really over the last 72 hours, it's very new for me, but I'll share it with you, is I've learned so much from these ticket scalping platforms, as I was saying. And I've learned that they've built these unbelievable distribution networks to sell tickets once a scalper acquires a ticket, where, like StubHub spends $850 million a year on marketing, way more than any of the legitimate promoters can. And what I'm excited about is there's a handful of tools where people are trying to do things in this. And I think I may need to build my own startup doing this, but it's allowing artists to tap into this multi-billion-dollar distribution network built by the secondary market and surface our tickets and our products in general in this huge marketplace that are looking to better engage with artists and are paying significantly more money to do it than a core fan is. So I've been racking my brain on how can we get into this market. And to give you an idea, the legitimate ticket market is about $18 billion a year. The secondary ticket market's between 9 and 10 billion a year. So that shows you there's a significant opportunity to utilize those distribution channels. And I'm trying to figure out, and I'm being a little cagey because I don't want to give all my ideas out because I may go build something, but I want to engage with that. I don't like a lot of the players in that world, but there are honest brokers. Like ticket scalpers call themselves brokers, but there are honest brokers in that world. And it's how can I connect with those honest people who are there with the right intentions and provide something better for both artists and fans.
Wow, you're going to co-opt those who co-opted the arbitrage of ticket pricing.
Yeah. Exactly. That's sort of what I think needs to happen is arbitrage the arbitragers, like figure out how to remove their margins and take their distribution network from them.
They're probably not listening to this podcast. Hopefully they're not listening.
But you know what? This is the thing that's so interesting is when I talk to a lot of these people, they want to have the conversation we're having right now. They're not afraid of it. They see it as opportunity. There's a lot of interesting people in that world who want to do more. They're not all criminals. And as I said, I've gotten to know some of these people. There's a lot of people who aren't bad people. So like, I'm not afraid for them to hear what I'm saying right now. My only fear is for them to build it first and to not be included and have some of the more honest people create better products.
Yeah, amazing. Randy, this has been so informative, so helpful. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share all this information with the Music Tectonics audience. Thanks so much, Randy.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know we do free monthly online events that you, our lovely podcast listeners, can join? Find out more at musictectonics.com. And while you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference and sign up for our newsletter to get updates. Everything we do explores the seismic shifts that shake up music and technology, the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform. Connect with me, Dmitri Vitsa, if you can spell it. We'll be back again next week, if not sooner.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.